ordinance amending town code section 16.10.090 for the town of East Troy municipal code, increasing permit fee. The town board, the town of East Troy, Walworth County, Wisconsin, does hereby ordain as follows. One, that section 16.10.090, the town of East Troy municipal code is hereby amended and recreated to read as follows. Under section 8, permit fee. Each application shall be accompanied by a permit fee of $50, the 50 is italicized, or in an amount established by a resolution or ordinance duly adopted by the town board. 2, the italicized portion of the preceding section is revised. All other portions of the above chapter section not affected by the above revisions shall remain. This ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as provided by law dated this 15th day of January 2024.
This is not a new ordinance, it's the increasing the fee, so if the board wishes to, only have one reading, they'd have to make a motion to.
I make a motion to waive second reading.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the second reading, discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries. Right, need a motion to approve ordinance 2024-1.
I move we approve ordinance number 2024-1, an ordinance amending the town code section 16.10.090 of the town of East Troy municipal code, increasing permit fee. I'll second.
Motion and second to approve ordinance 2024-1. Any discussion? Motion to approve, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, motion carries.
Okay, the next is further discussion on a noise ordinance and a portable storage container ordinance. So, I did receive now, comments from all board members, from a few members of the public, and I'll address them in the order that they're listed here. Noise ordinance first. There was a suggestion that, okay, first we'll start with enforcement and how to make it less, up to the discretion of the police chief. When the chief and I met, we thought it would be easier for enforcement purposes if we use times rather than decibel levels, because it's subjective even to use a decibel level. What becomes disturbing or an annoyance to one person at a certain level might not raise to that level if a different person were out there responding to a call. So using times rather than decibel readings kind of takes the guesswork out of it. But it raises other questions. One of them, so all loud and unnecessary noises before those time periods are allowed and are not able to be ticketed, was the chairman's question. Yes.
That's what it's been, right? I mean,
That is what it's
that's
been.
what it's been, it's trying to be common, courteous to your neighbors and between, no construction between 7 and 10.
Right. And then it was followed up by, is that too subjective? Wouldn't a decibel level reading be more objective? But isn't it subjective determining at what level a decibel reading should be in a town ordinance? I think it is.
And what equipment, how are we gonna monitor this?
Exactly.
And how many feet do you have to be away? I was looking into it, and it had to be 100 feet or 100 yards in order to make a reading from, let's say a boat, or.
Right.
Now, it depends if you go to the front of the boat or the back of the boat, where you decide, where are you making the reading, that all starts to become.
So there was a suggestion that we change the hours rather than Monday through Friday, to make it Sunday through Thursday, and then have Friday and Saturday hours extended. Regarding horns and signaling devices, it speaks to, sounding of a plainly audible device for an unnecessary and unreasonable period of time. That too is subjective. You know, whose definition of unnecessary and unreasonable are you going to use? Then I got a call, before I get to the call, there was a question under animals, what about incessant dog barking? Well, what's incessant mean? What's incessant to one person might be different to another person. I mean, some of these things, the officers have to use common sense. I mean, we can't regulate every minute detail. And we were looking for better enforcement. That was the purpose of kind of going after this ordinance again. Are there any businesses that have steam whistles? Probably not. I don't live in this town, so I don't know. But I did get a call from Lisa Vint, who says, close to her house, there is a grain drying facility that runs 24/7, and it sounds like a jet engine. She said she's far enough away, she can hear it if her windows are open, but she knows of a neighbor that lives closer that is subject to migraines. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this
It's kind of like with the money report.
facility or not.
Or the
I
train.
know
The
what
train
it is.
track.
Train track.
Right.
There's a lot of incidents.
Right.
And that's all hours of the.
You know, so I don't have businesses excluded. We talk about, well, other than a hospital and a school, in courts. You know, so should we further clarify what we're doing with businesses? I mean, if it's an approved conditional use for that zoning classification to operate a certain business,
What about the cans?
we're gonna have to include as an exception, you know, any granted permits for that particular occupation at that location.
In that situation, all I ever hear is, let's keep it rural. Well, they didn't get much more rural than that. So,
Right.
you know, I mean, definitely could be something. Farmers.
Right,
And
so
what are you
I,
gonna do if the animal's barking incessantly? Are you gonna make them
right,
turn it into a
what if it's
shelter,
during
or
the
what?
day and they're at work?
Right.
You can't, you know, force people to put bark collars on their pets.
If they're outside, you're inside.
Right. Right, so,
If it's a
the
puppy,
animal thing would be
it's
hard.
hard.
Just because how much control can you put on a person? It's not like we're enforcing whether or not they themselves put a leash on their pet. I mean, a dog's gonna bark. A rooster's gonna crow. You know,
You live in the country.
so, those are some of the questions, and then as another, exception, it was suggested that, the use of any amplifiers, bells, whistles, or loudspeakers at any Lake Beulah Yacht Club sailing event be excluded from enforcement.
Of course.
It states, starting runs for sailing events on town lakes. Is there any sailing events on other lakes?
No,
So we,
that's wild and crazy.
I think we're overreaching. I mean, that's where this stuff starts to bother me, is when you start nitpicking the heck out of everything, like, every possible scenario, like, you gotta give people be courteous if you can. Hey, my neighbor, it's a little too loud. Sure, yeah, no problem. You know, I mean, and I know that isn't always the case, but you have to give people common sense and hope, a little bit of respect, you know, before you.
Well, and we already had a noise ordinance that the chief thought was too hard to enforce.
Right.
I've used that old ordinance before to prosecute cases. And it comes down to a case-by-case basis. The judge hears the facts, he hears about the investigation that was done, what the officer observed when he or she was there, and then the judge rules on, was there a violation or wasn't there? I mean, I think we're trying to make it easier for the public to know what in fact is a violation or would be considered a violation. But maybe I sit down with the chief again and say, in the past, here's what was done. I mean, I will tell you, I don't see many tickets written under this section of the town code.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
and
mean,
then what's the fine, or what does the judge?
Right, I would put a penalty provision in here, but we also have a town code, ordinance that says if a specific ordinance does not have a separate penalty provision, this fine applies.
Just sort of like that. Is that where we find that? If there's no provision in the existing one, how would it?
No, it doesn't, it's not the fine used for disorderly conduct, I think it's just a flat amount.
But there's nothing.
Like
listed.
for our first violation, it's like $50, and then second or subsequent, it's higher. I think with, we had a case that was appealed up to circuit court, and we have one in our town code, a violation shall be not less than 10 for a first offense, nor, I think it's 100 for a second offense, and it was a matter of first impression. And although the gentleman was found guilty on appeal, the judge said, well, it was a first offense, your town code says not less than 10. I think he was throwing the defendant a bone not to appeal that decision, but he imposed a $10 penalty after I had to go up on appeal before a circuit court judge. It certainly wasn't effective use of town money for attorney fees on that case.
And does our police department give warnings before?
They do.
it's a
Well, that was part of the
discretion,
chief's report.
okay,
I think he's gone now, but he said there were 100 warnings maybe for the last year.
Yeah, 136, I think.
Well, but that's not just
Include
warnings on the
everything.
lake, that's traffic
That's
Right.
warnings.
Right.
Yeah, warnings for speed,
Specific to noise,
warnings for non-registration of vehicle.
Well, I know,
how many tickets?
I would say less than 5
Per year.
per year. Similar with junk, I don't see many of those, and I remember going back to when Chief Sturgis was here, a warning would always be given first with an opportunity to clean it up. And then usually they track it for at least 90 days before a decision's even made to issue a citation. And then even when they come before the judge then can on his own say, let's continue this, I'm not gonna set it for trial, come back with a status in 60 days or something similar. So yes, warnings can be given as
Well,
well.
even from what I understand in some of this discussion when it started too, it was on the lake, people playing music on the lake has been what I've heard in the community, which I can understand at times, I'm not directly on it, I can hear it, but I can also hear people having a conversation, I kind of hear the wind's blowing, and, it's very difficult to, how do you say it's too loud? But like I said, if the back of the boat's facing towards the direction of my house, it seems louder, but as soon as they turn around, it quiets down, because typically speakers are on towers, or they're facing that back direction, so. But our sign at the launch says, like no loud music at any time or something or other. And but that lake is public property, so it's no different if I'm driving on the road or if I'm on the water. How do you public property, how do you differentiate, like whatever we're gonna do, if it's between 7 AM and
I don't think I've ever seen a launch
10
noise
PM?
ticket.
But, no, I'm just saying, but that's what's posted at the launch, it was something from last year, maybe it's kind of, just updated it maybe, but.
I believe there was some
There's like
orange.
Exactly.
Snow, no wake and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, no,
Part of
absolutely,
that,
all
yeah.
that is all great, but, you
Yeah.
know, I think I've heard of that one in particularly more than I've heard any other people having a graduation, a wedding, you know, music in the garage, or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's what I've heard more of.
Well, and those types of celebrations or gatherings require a special event permit for the most part. And before the town board agrees to those permits, they usually have the chief review the application.
Right.
And then there is a specific section in there regarding the times that music will be played, if there's going to be a DJ, and
Absolutely.
it's a case by case thing that the board can review ahead of time.
Okay, I think what we're seeing here is you probably should meet with the chief again, now that you have plenty of input here on, you know, again, both of these are very complex when it comes right down to it. And the issue with the noise one always was, you know, if you're gonna lay it all on the chief, so it's his opinion, you know, he gets a complaint, he goes out there, and it's his opinion, okay? Well, then it comes to court. And the same thing that he said in his report, he says to the judge, and the judge makes a decision.
Right.
How is this gonna change it? I don't know. I do know that, you know, what he told me was it had no teeth. Well, maybe that part of it is, you said this existing one has no fine provision, correct?
Right, but we have another town code that if we didn't update the ordinance,
Okay,
we
you
could
would.
use the default penalty provision elsewhere in the code.
Okay. So, I would think maybe meeting with him.
And to your point, Joe, it's
So,
not actually just at the discretion of the chief, do all of his officers have the same definition
Yeah.
of public
Yeah.
nuisance and to
True.
Yeah,
it's
It's like we
So
give
they're
a-
writing the ticket.
Yeah, Word is the same, a lot of those rules is discretion of the, you know.
but it does mention,
itself.
the ordinance itself says, chief of police
Right.
shall not grant permit, blah, 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 will, has the authority.
Right.
All of it goes to the chief, and usually, in his view, if there was a issue with this, he'd be dialed.
He's gonna get a call every time that a police officer goes to a
It would be
meeting?
the
Well, first
officer-
shift,
Officer
he would be
on
there,
duty,
but-
yeah.
Well,
Typically,
Monday
those-
through Friday,
Right.
Right.
so
But he-
it's the officer on duty, and if
Yeah.
that's in the language, then that piece of the puzzle would need to be changed.
Well, if someone's having an outdoor bonfire or party going on in the evening,
Right.
Yes.
playing loud music, it's probably not going to be the chief that
Correct.
shows
Right,
up.
and that's.
Thursday
usually
night
when
at
you
11
hear about
o'clock,
So
Right,
that,
because it goes till 10.
Yeah,
that's just, that should be addressed in the two, and that, you have to discuss.
Careful what size fire you have too.
right.
Do you need a special event permit to have something on your own property?
It's recommended.
I think it was what does it say, gathering of, I don't recall, 25 or 35 people, if you're gonna have more than that.
Be a bigger,
It's required.
bigger event, I mean,
Now, if you have an, say you have a graduation party and it's open house and people are coming and going, you don't need a special permit, unless you're gonna have people parking all the
Like
way
a wedding
down.
in your backyard,
And you
or
want, you know, to let the police.
you're hosting a family reunion, so there'll be cars lining the road on all sides.
Yeah, you wanna get permission for that.
I think the special event, permit ordinance makes reference to a certain number of people. I just don't recall what it is offhand.
It does usually save you headaches, I think, if you get to that larger amount of people, you know, the town already knows that it's officer on
Well, right,
duty,
if
already
a-
knows,
if
so
a
if they
permit
get a
was
phone call,
issued,
they're like, hey. yep,
And a
we
complaint
know,
comes
we know
in, the
what's
chief
going on.
can
They
say,
know, yeah.
hey, I checked it out, town board approved. There's really, it's out of my hands, I can't issue citations.
And we don't charge a permit fee for those,
special.
even though there's work by the chief involved, we don't charge a permit
The
fee.
chief reviews them before they come to the town board.
Yeah,
Are you sure there's no fee?
now for, the only time we charge a fee is when somebody.
Oh, for the
uses our
park,
For
You're right.
non-residents.
you're
For
right.
non-resident, otherwise,
Yeah, no, it's not, yeah.
I'm just thinking of 4th of July celebrations, like, it's rampant.
Right. Or I'm assuming the tie-up on the lake, gets noisy during the day with people.
They don't pull.
Are you gonna permit public waterways?
No.
No, I'm saying, we're talking about noise and how it's, the water or wind direction can affect.
Sure can.
Well, I'm 7.5 miles from Alpine Valley and sometimes I can hear the concert. I can't imagine what it must be like for people living right there on Highway D.
Either,
Yeah.
for the football game with the wind, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I can too, yeah.
So-
5 miles away.
I mean, this was just on for discussion tonight, but if you want me to talk to the chief and discuss what his belief that there was no teeth to this, discuss that in more detail. Say, I don't think the time thing is going to work because that too is subjective, in my opinion. I think the decibel level is subjective, depending on who you ask, unless they come in here with some sort of measuring device and they play a certain sound at different decibel levels until all 5 board members agree at this level, it's unreasonable, you know?
And is the chief really gonna be there, or is it all gonna be shut off by the time he gets there? Measure it.
Right.
Well, and usually it would be, you know, if in fact you do start again, I mean, that's why our officers, I think the majority of our officers are great, and I think they're pretty realistic and wanna give you a chance, but.
This is speculation on my part, but I believe that the reason why I see so few noise citations come through court is that I think it's, at least for me, a reasonable expectation that if a noise complaint comes in and an officer goes out, they say, I received a complaint that your music's too loud, please turn it down. If I'm called out again, I'm gonna have to issue a citation. That should usually be enough to get someone to turn their music down.
All right, yes, I think you should, continue the discussion with the chief, but it sounds good to you guys.
I agree, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I guess, do we think there'll be enough changes to continue to rack up hours?
Well, my talking to the chief, I can't imagine that discussion will be more than 15 minutes.
So you're not gonna do another draft?
Not unless the board tells me to. What I'm hearing now is maybe we don't need to make any change.
That's fine.
That's what
Okay.
that's what I feel, if we're discussing it.
I think we'll have-
I think we need to leave it up to the people in the community that, you know, try to.
So maybe just leave it out for discussion only again for next month, and I'll just give the board